animal language and human language is huge. Still, for a long time, this idea has persisted that we might be able to train animals into using human language, human symbolic language and interaction. And I am sure you are aware of some experiments that were carried out at the University of California, UC Irvine and other places, in which they trained monkeys to interact with their trainers, and they appear to actually be able to express certain basic needs and ideas when interacting with their trainers. But all of those experiments fundamentally failed. They were fundamentally flawed. What the animals perceived was usually the expression in the face of the trainer, the expression of satisfaction when the animal did the right thing. So the animals were looking for more subtle clues. They weren't really focusing that much on the symbols per se. Okay? I don't know if you've heard of Noam Chomsky. I don't know if this name sounds familiar to you. Noam Chomsky. Now, Noam Chomsky is a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. In the 1960s, he revolutionized the science of linguistics. He really, almost we could say, he created a new science from some basic work that had been done prior to him. And he's been #1, really top of the academic world ever since. He's very well known worldwide, but not so much in this country. And not so much, you'll see why, basically for political reasons. He is a prolific author. He publishes an average of 2 books per year, one on linguistics and one on politics. And he's quite an unusual character for someone who has reached the peak, the very top of the academic world. He's a radical. Normally, when people get that high, they become conservative. He's a radical. He's as radical as you can possibly imagine. He's extremely radical, extremely harsh on everything the U.S. has done in the world, how it has abused other countries and exploited them, and he's very well documented, and he, as I said, he publishes profusely. He's an anarchist. He is, ideologically speaking, an anarchist. Okay, and he is still a very respected authority in the academic world. Whenever he comes to Los Angeles, he will give a lecture, sometimes at UCLA or USC. Now, USC and UCLA have for a long time disputed #2 or #3 in the field of linguistics. Their departments being #2 in the country or #3, always after MIT, because MIT has Chomsky, of course, and the top of the world, you could say. And so he always gives a lecture on linguistics, and he gives a lecture on politics. And his lectures are always full, just crowded, hundreds of people in there, okay? Especially the ones on politics, because the ones on linguistics are much more technical, and not everyone is really capable of following what he says. Let me tell you, whenever he goes abroad, there are thousands of people there trying to see Chomsky. He has to be taken from place to place in helicopter and all that. And he is, as I said, very, very radical. I remember seeing him at a lecture at USC, this large conference room, hundreds of people there. Now, USC is not the most appropriate place for an anarchist, a radical, to give a lecture, as you can imagine. And I just remember this, as he began talking about the U.S. and what the U.S. had been had done in Central America and this and that. You know, he's very critical of also of Israel with the Palestinians and all of this. Let me say, by the way, he's American and he's Jewish, both things. And when he began giving his lecture, he was being so extremely bitter with everything this country has done in the world, in modern history, that I saw this professor, this lady, getting up from the front row and walking out in tears. I could see the tears rolling down her cheeks. She couldn't take it anymore. So you can imagine what Chomsky is like when you listen to him. Right? Well, Chomsky had a debate with Skinner. I'm sure you're more familiar with Skinner, probably, right? The behavioral psychologist. Skinner thought that, yes, you can teach animals language by using this Pavlovian system of stimuli and response and training them in the way he believed that we humans train our children how to talk, by using this modified form of human language that we call motherese, the simplified form of language, and reinforcing their behavior every time they do something well. We will give them a little pat and say, that's nice, that's how you speak, yes. Well, if we do the same in a well-structured manner, Skinner thought we will be able to do that with animals too. We eventually will get into to use human language. Chomsky doesn't believe that. Chomsky thinks that we are born with an innate capacity for learning language. And that capacity, he calls it the language acquisition device, or LID, language acquisition device. And he thinks that through interaction, that language acquisition device becomes activated. And it's quite a complex process. He calls that, there's something called universal language with different parameters that get activated in different languages. But you have to have that language acquisition device. Now, although Chomsky is not a religious person at all, he's an anarchist, he's very radical, but still his idea that we are born with this innate capacity for language and that without it we can't speak really fits very well with religious ideology. Just let me say this as an aside. Okay? Anyway, he had this debate with Skinner, and at that debate, Chomsky gave what I believe to be the final argument against animals being capable of learning language. He said to Skinner, to me, that killed Skinner all at once, okay, and his arguments, his position. He said, look, to say that animals could learn language if we teach them amounts to saying that there is an island somewhere out there full of flightless birds waiting for us to go and teach them how to fly. He said, that's nonsense. If birds can fly anywhere in the world, you can be sure they're not going to be waiting for us to teach them how to fly. If animals could speak, you can be sure they're not waiting for the UC Irvine researchers to go and teach them how to do it. They'd be doing it by now. Nature doesn't waste resources. To me, that was the bottom line of the argument. No further argument on animal language after that. That was a famous debate. Right? So anyway, now we move on to the direct duty views of animal rights. The direct duty views says that there is no inseparable line. There is no line which is impossible to overcome. That's what inseparable means. There is no essential division between humans and animals. Remember, Descartes was the only one who was truly clear as far as there being an essential distinction between humans and animals. What was that essential distinction? Dane, what was the essential distinction between humans and animals, according to Descartes? No? Descartes.
Oh, Descartes. Well, essentially, the animals were machines, and they couldn't really.
Why were they machines? Why does he say they were machines?
Well,
what are they lacking?
The souls.
The soul. Okay, the soul. Yeah, we pronounce the name usually Descartes, not Descartes. Although there are both pronunciations. Okay, I'm telling you this because I've been corrected several times. I learned from someone, oh, you say Descartes. So I kept saying Descartes, and someone said, no, you say Descartes. Well, the French pronunciation is Descartes. Normally, we follow the French pronunciation, the original pronunciation. Descartes is fine. I mean, you're not going to be graded down for that, but just to make that point, okay? The soul. So Descartes is the only one who makes a radical, essential distinction between humans and animals clear. Humans have a soul which is immortal, that survives death. Animals don't. They are just matter. They are just machines. He's the only philosopher that really proposes a clear, essential distinction. All other distinctions we may propose turn out to be, for the most part, accidental. There are accidental distinctions between humans. Some are tall, some are short, some are blonde, some are dark haired, some are curly hair.